Well, hi everybody. How are you? Welcome to Keeping It Real Story and Art number 436, is it? And this is a premiere night because you know where I am. You know, I would be there with you, but normally this is live. But when my grandkids call and one of them's having a birthday, woohoo, I'm out of here. So I didn't want to leave you though without stories. And so I have two tonight. And we're continuing on with the exploration of the artwork by Evan Turk and in one of the books. And then we'll switch to a revisit of the artwork by Doug Salati, and in a book that was his first book and written with Tommy DePaula, or illustrated in a book by Tommy DePaula. So, are you ready? Here we're going. For the first book, it's called. We're going to start with the Tommy DePaula book. I'm starting with that one because the book I read on Thursday was one of them was called The People's Painter. And Tommy DePaula was actually a student of Ben Shahn, who that book was about. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. So it's a kind of a nice tie-in follow-up to that. So this is a book called In a Small Kingdom by Tommy DePaula, and it's illustrated by Doug Salati. We looked at several of his other books recently, and I think you're going to like it. It's pretty amazing. In a Small Kingdom by Caldecott Honor and Newbery Honor winner Tommy DePaula. In a small kingdom along an ancient road, a bell rang out in the middle of the night. Townspeople and travelers from all across the kingdom rushed to the palace. As the balcony doors opened, the chief counselor stepped forward and announced, "The old king is dead." A cry rose up, for the old king, being fair and just, was much loved. The small kingdom had flourished under his long rule as a place for safety, for caravans. It was said that the king had possessed secret powers against bandits and thieves that rested in the magnificent imperial robe, which few had ever seen. But now that the old king was dead, what would the future bring? The next morning, the counselors reappeared. "In 3 days' time," announced the chief counselor, "the old king will be laid to rest. For 2 weeks, the gates of our kingdom will be closed for mourning, and all visitors will be asked to leave. But don't despair, people of the kingdom. Before he died, the king chose the son of his old age, the young prince, as his successor." The people were pleased. It was said that the young prince was thoughtful, gentle, and the imperial robe would give him the power that a king needs. All agreed that the kingdom would be in good hands. Except for one person. The young prince's older half-brother seethed with jealousy. "The old king was my father, too," he said to himself. "How dare he choose my half-brother to be king?" In an instant, the angry half-brother knew what he would do. "Without the robe, the young prince cannot rule," he thought. "He is too young, too weak, but I am not." That very night, the half-brother broke into the wardrobe where the imperial robe was locked away and took it to the top of a high tower. He slashed it to bits, scattering the torn pieces. Now he would wait. The time of mourning came to an end. And the young prince was led to the wardrobe. The imperial robe is so powerful, you will only wear it in the inner rooms of the palace, the chief counselor told the prince. It is time to see this remarkable garment. You can imagine the horror everyone felt when they saw that the robe was gone. The poor prince fled in despair and locked himself away. Without the robe, he could not be king. Without a ruler, the small kingdom was in danger. Anyone could attack and take over, so the gates were kept shut. The inns and guest houses stayed empty, but without visitors, the kingdom would soon be penniless. The townspeople were desolate. No one knew what to do. They needed the robe. Where was it? Only the half-brother knew. With the robe destroyed, the kingdom would soon become desperate, and he would step in to take his place as ruler. He prepared to put his plan into action. Around the same time, in a humble part of the kingdom, some children were playing by the river. "Look what I found," called a girl, as the other children crowded around. "It's the most beautiful cloth I've ever seen, and there are more pieces of it over here and more over there." "Let's bring them to Amma. She's wise. She'll know what they are," said a boy. And so they did. "Why, these are fragments of the imperial robe," Amma said. "When I was a young seamstress at court, I once repaired the sleeve." As Amma gently held the shimmering, glimmering pieces, she knew what had to be done. "Children, go back to the river and look everywhere for the other fragments," Amma said. And together the children found more and more and more. Amma gathered those who could sew. They sewed and sewed, but still fragments were missing. "Tell everyone to bring a piece of fabric that is precious to them," said Amma. "If they give lovingly, the robe can be completed." And the people did. "Here's a small piece from my wedding veil," an old woman said. "This is a bit of blanket we used to protect our child when she was very ill," said a mother and father. "She is grown now." "My grandfather gave me this scarf to keep the sun off my neck," said a boy. "This is a coat from a beautiful doll my aunt brought me from a caravan," said a young girl. Over and over, people brought pieces of precious things from their lives. And Amma and the people sewed into the robe every treasured fragment that could be found. When the robe was finished, it did not look the same as before, but a new, extraordinary pattern appeared. The people took the robe to the palace. "It is for our new king," the people said. The counselors brought the robe to the forlorn young prince and told him what had been done. The people found fragments of the imperial robe and sewed them together with fragments from their own lives, said the chief counselor. "They did it out of love, for you and for the kingdom." "Then I shall wear it," said the prince, "but I will be robed in public. All shall see this new mystical robe." The counselors were amazed at the newfound strength of the young prince. The half-brother witnessed this from the shadows. "The robe has been found," he said to himself. "I must leave the kingdom before the robe destroys me." And off into the night he fled, and was never seen or heard from again. And the very next day, for the first time, the people saw their new king in the imperial robe. It was a thing of mystery, power, and beauty. "My people," the young king declared, "this robe that I wear not only has the power, but also your love." just as you have the love of your new king. And that's the story of this In a Small Kingdom. Doug Salati lives in Brooklyn, New York now. Or maybe so. Tommy DePaula. That was the first book that Doug Salati ever illustrated. Pretty cool way to kick off your career, huh? That would be quite something. Quite something to illustrate a book for Tommy DePaula, who is an amazing illustrator in and of his own right. Okay, so the other book that I have for you tonight is the last of the books that I have by Evan Turk, illustrated by Evan Turk. And this one is by Matthew Burgess. And Matthew Burgess is an assistant professor at Brooklyn College and a poet in residence in New York City schools through Teachers and Writers Collaborative. His award-winning first children's books, Enormous Smallness, A Story of E. Cummings, was a Junior Library Guild selection and an ALA notable children's book. He's also the author of The Bear and the Moon, and he lives in Brooklyn. And yes, so this is the book I'm going to read next, and it is called The Red Tin Box. And it is just a delight of a story. Here, I'm going to scoot me up here a little bit ways there. So it's just one of those wonderful stories of, well, you'll see. You'll see. The Red Tin Box. Let's see what he did for, used for making the illustrations. Hang on, if I can find that first. Illustrations in this book were rendered in gouache. Okay, so there's not going to be a lot of transparency on them. Interesting. The Red Tin Box. On her 8th birthday, when the sun was peeking over the treetops and everyone in the house was still asleep, Maud slipped outside and across the wet grass to the edge of the woods. At the foot of the flowering dogwood, in a soft spot where she once found a fallen nest, the earth seemed to whisper, "Here." Maud dug and dug until the hole was deep enough to hold a red tin box. Only Maud knew the treasures she'd placed inside the box. Only Maud heard the words she said as she buried it. Far overhead, the sun kissed the clouds pink, and an angle of geese honked excitedly. And Maud made a promise to herself. Maud grew and grew and grew, as all children do. She had a daughter of her own, and she grew too. But Maud never forgot the red tin box. In one corner of her mind, it glowed, though one by one, the treasures she had placed inside slipped from her memory. One November afternoon, Maud was seized with a feeling like a bright spring sunrise. The next day, Maud picked up her granddaughter after school. Together, they turned east as they drove and drove and drove 4 towns over. Across the river she swam in as a girl, past the road to the old schoolhouse. Maud told Eve about the red tin box, about the hole she dug beneath the dogwood, about the promise she made when she was 8 years old. But what's inside the box? How do you know it's still there? These were questions Maud couldn't answer. They sat quietly, side by side, in worry and in wonder. It was possible they wouldn't find it. So many years had passed. But there was the dogwood that Maud daydreamed under as a girl. Read books under, fell in the sleep in the grass under. Holding her granddaughter's hand, Maud walked the perimeter of the tree until one spot seemed to whisper, "Here." They both took turns nudging the shovels into the cold ground. Digging was hard, but with each scoop the dirt became a little softer, until suddenly the ring of a metallic clink. Eve watched as her grandmother lifted the treasures out, examining them one by one. A tiny toy elephant, a marble like tiger's eye, an ancient piece of candy wrapped in silver foil, a costume mustache, a small brown bottle, a bird's nest woven with purple string, and an iridescent ear-shaped shell. Once Maud let out such a high-pitched ha that a dog in the distance began barking. Maud told many stories on the drive home. Sometimes Eve asked questions. Sometimes she laughed when her grandmother laughed. And it didn't bother her when her grandmother cried. Not one bit. When they arrived, Maud placed the red tin box into her granddaughter's hands. "This is for you." Far overhead, the stars blinked. An angle of geese honked in the dusty dark. And Eve, seized with a feeling, made a promise to herself. And that's the red tin box. It hit me as I was coming to the end of that. That's much kind of like my grandmother giving me her camera. I mean, it's just all the things. I love this book. I thought it was just so beautifully gentle and beautifully wonderful, and that connection between a grandmother and a granddaughter, and the fact that she made a promise to herself. And what was inside the box eventually didn't matter. It was just that promise to herself. Oh my gosh, I love that. I hope it inspires all of us to make a promise to ourselves, to do something wonderful for ourselves, to remember that we leave a beautiful legacy all the time in every little thing that we do, we can, and to share that with others. That's very cool. I love this book. The Red Tin Box. There you go. By Matthew Burgess. Illustrated by Evan Turk. And that's it for another story and art, a story time tonight. Premiere for you, because I'm off making those memories with those grandkids. Just like Maud did, that's what I'm doing. So I'll talk to you guys when I'm back, because we will have another story and art next time, and it will be live. But until next time, keep looking for the beauty hidden in plain sight. It's all around. And the first place you'll find it is when you go look in the mirror. Give yourself a high five and make that promise to yourself. I'll see you next time.
Not you, not her, not him or them gon' stop me from getting mine now. Not you, not her, not him or them gon' silence my rising inner child. And every time I look up in the sky, I know it'll be alright. Yeah. And every time I look up in the sky, I know it'll be alright. Yeah, gotta get mine.
Night, everybody.